Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. I'm Safiyyah, your host. There is a hadith purported to be from the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, which says that women are deficient in their intellect and their faith. Last time we looked at the intellect part of that hadith, and this time we're going to look at faith. We are exploring a series of books by this scholar, al-Halim Abu Shuqqah from Egypt, and he talks about this hadith. We're going to look at some of his arguments. Here with me is Dr. Shabir. Dr. Shabir, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
Pleasure to be on.
Let's look at this hadith, Dr. Shabir. Last time we looked at intellect. Now we want to look at why the Prophet might have said that women are deficient in their faith.
Yeah, and just
with reference to Abu Shuqqah, of course.
Yes. And to give the broader perspective on Abu Shuqqah's book, I mean, he has compiled 8 volumes in which he has given hadith after hadith that reflect very positively on women. And he, at the same time, mentioned some hadiths which are not authentic, even fabricated, which need to be sidelined, but which have been used in Muslim societies to the detriment of women.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, he acknowledges that there are some hadiths which are in the authentic collections, widely regarded as being authentic. He does not dispute that designation for them. But at the same time, he finds that those hadiths need some explanation and they have been misunderstood, and he is giving the proper understanding. This is one of them, a hadith that says that women are deficient both in mind and religion.
Mm-hmm.
And we dealt with the mind, as you said, and now we're dealing with the religion because now this requires some further elaboration. Now, Abu Shuqqah gives his defense of the hadith, at least for this portion. As we'll deal with now. So it's important to listen to his reasoning, and then we can evaluate whether his reasoning actually fits with our modern understandings or not.
So let's begin with what the Prophet said, because the Prophet had a reason, supposedly in this hadith, for why women are deficient in their faith.
Yes. And I'm glad you said what the Prophet said in the hadith, because there's a difference between what the Prophet said and what the Prophet said in the hadith, right? Because a hadith is basically a little story, a little anecdote.
Mm-hmm.
So what the Prophet, peace be upon him, said in the story should not be confused with what the Prophet, peace be upon him, said in real life.
Mm-hmm.
See, average persons, we make that, we confuse things, right?
Yes.
We see an actor on the screen and we meet that actor in the supermarket and we think, okay, we're meeting that character from the movie. No, you're not meeting the character from the movie. You're meeting the actor. That's the real life individual, right? So if we translate that to our context of our present discussion, like meeting the Prophet, peace be upon him, sitting in his circle and hearing him speak, that's not the same as hearing a hadith in which the Prophet, peace be upon him, speaks, right? Because a hadith has been narrated from one person to another by word of mouth initially until it was put into writing. So we have to keep that distinction in mind. So yes, in the hadith, the Prophet, peace be upon him, says that women are deficient in mind and mind and religion. And when he was asked for clarification, now dealing with the religion part, how are women deficient in their religion? He asks them, isn't it true that when you have your period, you do not pray or fast? And they confirmed. And he said, okay, well, that's the deficiency in your religion. So now, how could that be a deficiency, and what does that mean? So Abu Shuqqah is explaining. First, he's saying, well, this is only a temporary deficiency. It's not like a permanent, and it's not about like something is wrong with women.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that during those days, because of the Islamic classical purity rules, women are not allowed to engage in certain types of devotions, which require being in a state of purity. So notable in this regard would be the prayer, and somehow fasting got to be included in this because as far as I know, fasting doesn't actually require you to be in the state of purity. And actually this is demonstrated by hadith which speak about men getting up in the morning, needing to enter the state of purity because of some nocturnal emission, and it's clear that they can start their fasting while
but
they're
they
still
can't
in
pray.
Yes, of course. Somehow, okay, so that's included. So overlooking that for the moment, Abu Shuqqah is taking for granted that women cannot pray or fast when they're in their periods, and of course, and they cannot circumambulate the Kaaba. So if a woman was performing Hajj or the pilgrimage, whether the greater Hajj or the lesser one, Umrah, then she would have to delay that one aspect of circumambulating the Kaaba until she's in the state of puberty. So for Abu Shuqqah, it's not such a huge problem because it's only a temporary a restriction. He adds that women, even during those periods, can do other forms of devotion, which do not require one to be in the state of puberty. And interestingly enough, he includes reading the Quran, because some people may think, no, a woman cannot read the Quran during that state. And they're wrong. And Abu Shuqqah is right to include reading the Quran in this time as well. And they can perform other acts of devotion like remembrance of God, seeking forgiveness of God, the tasbih that people do by reciting the names of God, Subhanallah, glory be to God, Alhamdulillah, God is, praise be to God, Allahu Akbar, God is the greatest, and so on. So all of these, in the Catholic tradition, people say the Hail Marys on their rosaries. So Muslims might be reciting the, glorifications of God, and that could be done. Doesn't require one to be in the state of purity. And of course, Abu Shuqqah says, religion is not restricted to only these acts of devotion, mu'amalat, or dealings in society, being fair to other people. And to begin with, faith in God, this is something that will remain with him throughout this period. He does much to change the temperament of people in thinking about this. It's not like a blanket condemnation of women, that women are deficient in religion, but it's really reflecting the complexity of Islamic law that requires purity for certain acts of worship, and women cannot do those particular acts of worship when they're in that state of impurity.
But of course, if a woman is actually following God's commands not to do certain things because they're in that state, it would seem like they're actually, fulfilling a religious obligation rather than being deficient in their religion.
Yeah. So this is where we can step back from Abu Shuqqah's discussion. And while we appreciate everything he said, and of course what he said, was an advance for his time 3 decades ago in Egypt for him to be speaking thus. Now we can take it further by asking, he takes it for granted that this is God's command that the woman cannot pray or fast during this period. Or to circumambulate the Kaaba. But there is no verse of the Quran that actually depicts this. He mentions this particular hadith, but this particular hadith actually does not specifically say that a woman cannot pray or fast during the period. It says you do not. And there's a lot of difference between you do not and you cannot. But let's say we take it for granted that a woman cannot, as it is taken for granted in classical Islamic jurisprudence. Well, then why would this be a fault of the woman? Why would it be that her religion is somehow deficient? Because if she is convinced that God commanded her not to pray during that period and she's not praying, well, basically by not praying, she's actually following the commandment of God.
Yes.
And then she should be rewarded for this. And if even Abu Shuqqah actually said that when a woman is patient during this period with God because she would have liked to pray, but she cannot, and she's patient, well, she's getting a reward for her patience. Well, that would mean that women do have an edge over men in this regard, because they're being rewarded for something that the man could not be rewarded for during that period of time. But more so, if we think of the woman not being obligated to pray in that time and the man being obligated to pray, and the man may fulfill his obligation or think that he's fulfilling his obligation by praying, but maybe his prayer is deficient and not accepted. It would mean that he has not actually fulfilled his obligation, and it would mean that he has something to answer for in the day of judgment for those days in which his prayer was not accepted. But for the woman, she is scot-free because she didn't have to pray, and she didn't pray, and in the meantime, so she has nothing to answer for. And in the meantime, by being patient with God and following God's commandment by not praying, she's getting a reward. So in a way, she is really ahead of the game here. So why would this be classified as a deficiency in religion?
Yes, and also it's out of her control, right? It's something that God prescribed upon her.
Yes.
So it's not like she's doing something wrong.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So all of these considerations from a logical point of view should help us to think clearly about whether or not this is something the Prophet, peace be upon him, actually said, or this is something that people attributed to him in hindsight after the passing of some decades after his demise. And it's probably the latter, because it's inconceivable that the Prophet, peace be upon him, is going to demean women like this by telling them that their religion is deficient, when, of course, there's nothing they can do about it. It's not any fault of their own. Why would God be blaming the women for something that He's commanded them not to pray, if indeed He has? Why would He be blaming them for not praying? Why would He consider that a deficiency in their religion? This may come as some relief to those who are having a difficulty, but of course, those who don't have any difficulty with this, to each his own. But on the whole, we want to plead with the Muslim leaders to rethink the way in which we have been just simply dishing out from the past without giving due consideration to the rationality of what we are imposing on the Ummah of our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
All right, thank you for that, Dr. Shabir.
You're welcome.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Muslim Media Hub, the new home of Let the Quran Speak.
Here we spread positivity and good. We help people experience the beauty of Islam and help them appreciate and understand Muslims.
This beautiful building we purchased at cost $2.3 million.
Yeah, we've already raised a third of that money, and with your help, inshallah, we can pay off the rest.
So we're looking for people who can give $1,000 each. If you can be part of the select group, that's amazing.
Otherwise, just please give whatever you can. Every dollar counts.
It's our collective responsibility to share the message of Islam with our fellow human beings. Please help us continue this good work.
It's a sadaqah jariyah, something that will continue to be a benefit to the Muslim community long after Safiyyah and I are gone.
Please support our work at muslimmediahub.com.
Your support is zakat eligible and tax deductible.
May Allah bless you and your loved ones today and always. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.